You auditioned for Titanic?
The audition went really well.
Welcome to Movie List, and today we're counting down 20 actors who were rejected from huge roles.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is uncomfortable for me.
For the list, we're looking at roles that could have been a career-defining moment for these actors, but ultimately, fate had other plans for them. Some of these films ended up breaking box office records. Which one of these is your favorite? Let us know in the comments. Number 20. Matthew McConaughey as Jack from Titanic. Have you ever tried out for something and felt so good about your attempt that you thought you had it in the bag? That's exactly what Matthew felt like when he auditioned for the role of Jack in Titanic. When he left the audition, everyone was giving him hugs, slapping his back, and there were cheers everywhere. But things didn't actually work out.
Oh, no, I never got the role. The audition went great. I actually did think I had it.
Despite his great audition, the role ended up going to Leonardo DiCaprio and catapulted him to insane heights in his career. But hey, Matthew did just fine without Jack too. Number 19. Jennifer Lawrence as Alice. It's one thing to get a good role, and another to feel so passionately about one that you just need to have it.
I volunteer! I volunteer!
That's what Jennifer Lawrence felt about Alice, but sadly, she didn't make the cut.
Dying for it, but the one thing that really killed me, like the only time I've ever been truly devastated by losing an audition was at Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland.
This is one of the only roles Jennifer has ever talked about losing out on. Number 18. Jamie Foxx as Rod Tidwell. You'd think that stars wouldn't get starstruck, but deep down they're all fanboys too. At least Jamie Foxx is. He got an audition of a lifetime for the movie Jerry Maguire for the character Rod Tidwell. And well, it was an audition opposite Tom Cruise. Just like anyone else would, he was so starstruck he couldn't hold it together.
I blew it so bad that he just started laughing at me. It was like,
having one of your idols laugh at you is a low that no one should have to go through. Number 17. Meryl Streep as Dwan. Jessica Lange did a great job at the 1976 King Kong remake, but it turns out Meryl Streep wanted the role too.
You wish to go to the festival.
Producer Dino De Laurentiis' son had seen her work and thought she'd be perfect for the role of Dwan, but Dino De Laurentiis did not. What's even crazier is that when she went to audition, he called her ugly in Italian, thinking she wouldn't understand. But Meryl speaks Italian herself.
So I said to him, mi dispiace molto, but I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry I'm not beautiful enough to be in King Kong.
If that's not savage, nothing is. Number 16. Tom Holland in Star Wars. Can you believe anyone rejected the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?
You're that Spider guy on YouTube, right? Call me Spider-Man! Okay, Spider-Man! Don't flip! Yeah!
Well, Tom Holland auditioned for a part in Star Wars, you know, the Dream franchise. But when it came to reading the lines opposite a woman reading for R2-D2, he just couldn't stop laughing.
But I just remember thinking, there's no way this lady's gonna read the robot's lines opposite me just because that would be ridiculous.
But then she did. All the beep boops and all. And well, Tom couldn't hold it together. It got to the point that the casting directors realized he didn't have it in him to actually stop cracking up. Number 15. Taylor Lautner as Shane. Most actors can't say that they divided the whole world with their name, but Taylor Lautner can. But before he got cast for Twilight, Taylor had tried out for Joe Jonas's role on Camp Rock.
You caught that, huh?
Even though he made it past almost all of the rounds, he did so by lying that he was a great singer and dancer.
We all did have to sing, dance, and act. Those were the three elements that we had to do.
In reality, Taylor could only act and somewhat dance, so no surprise that when it came down to it, he couldn't make the final cut. Number 14. Asa Butterfield as Spider-Man. Marvel's Spider-Man was one of the biggest roles of the decade, and a lot of actors auditioned for the role, including Asa Butterfield.
Every so often there's a part that you really want and there's a script that you love and you kind of put your heart and soul into it and you don't get it.
But it was for the best because shortly after that heartbreaking rejection, he was cast as the lead Otis in Sex Education. And well, if he had gotten Spider-Man, he couldn't have done both. So ultimately, he'd have to drop one anyway. Number 13. Jake Gyllenhaal in Lord of the Rings. Some roles need a lot of prep work before you ever actually make it into the audition room, but sometimes opportunities just fall into your lap, and you have to make do. That's how it was when Jake Gyllenhaal tried to audition for Lord of the Rings. Being a super fan of the books, he wanted nothing more than to just be a part of the franchise. He was okay being just a hobbit too. So when the casting call came, he went for it. But he forgot to work on his lines, and no one really told him he'd need an accent for the role too.
And then I had a scene with lines, and I didn't have an accent, because everyone has a British accent in that, and I didn't do an accent for it.
This audition just didn't go well.
And he turned to me, he's like, "You are the worst actor I have ever."
And Jake had to come home empty-handed. Number 12. John Krasinski as Captain America. You can be a great actor and still get a rejection that stings for a lifetime, and losing out on Captain America was that for John Krasinski. He put a lot of effort into the audition and even got to wear the iconic suit.
They give me the suit, and I was actually putting the suit on, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Unfortunately for John, the role ended up going to Chris Evans instead.
I acted my heart out that day. And it didn't work out.
But fate has its way of working out. He eventually made an appearance in the MCU as Reed Richards in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Number 11. Tom Hiddleston as Thor. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston have embodied Thor and Loki for a decade, so it's hard to imagine them as anyone else. But did you know that Tom originally came in for a different role?
So I never auditioned for Loki. I only ever auditioned for Thor, which is nuts.
He was mentally prepared to be Thor, but since Chris Hemsworth was basically born for that role, the casting directors chose Tom for Loki instead.
You're done.
I don't answer to you, lackey.
It's Loki, and you will answer to the Grandmaster.
Had he never walked in that day for Thor, the world would have missed out on the perfect Loki too. Number 10. Lucy Hale as Anastasia Steele. Coming off of a major role like Arya Montgomery in Pretty Little Liars has to be nerve-wracking. You've got years of feeling safe in your role, and then suddenly you're out looking for work that might compare in terms of success. For that, you have to take risks. And Lucy Hale took that risk by auditioning for the role of Anastasia Steele in 50 Shades of Grey.
You all right? Christian Grey.
I'm Anastasia Steele.
She didn't really realize the extent of what she was signing up for, and, well, let's just say she didn't even make it past the monologue.
I did. I was very young. It had to have been not 10 years ago. It was a while ago, and I was, like, mortified.
It was too much for her to handle, and she felt like she couldn't really commit during the audition. She said that she felt like she was making a fool of herself. So it's no surprise that the role eventually went to Dakota Johnson, who absolutely killed it. Number 9. Jennifer Lawrence as Olive Pendergast. There are only a few characters that have become an absolute sensation the way Olive Pendergast did. Emma Stone embodied the character so well that it was hard to even imagine her as herself after the movie came out. But before she got the role, Jennifer Lawrence was in the running for it.
I auditioned for Easy A. I wanted it so bad.
Olive's crazy wit was right up Jennifer's alley, and she wanted nothing more than to get that role. But ultimately, Stone just ended up being so perfect for it that she snatched it right up. The two actresses still joke about the whole situation, but this might just be one of those roles that Jennifer would regret losing out on forever. Number 8. Millie Bobby Brown as X-23. Most of us know Millie Bobby Brown as Eleven from Stranger Things. Others know her for the unstoppable Enola Holmes. But did you know she almost played a mix of the two too? Yup, Millie actually auditioned for the role of X-23 in Logan.
The best audition for me was Wolverine. I went for Logan, and I went for the little girl, and I watched it. But, you know, I went for it. It meant so much to me.
It was when Millie's popularity as Eleven was taking off, and she was really enjoying being in the superhuman realm of Hollywood. But the casting directors ended up going with Daphne Keane instead. Number 7. Eddie Redmayne as Bilbo Baggins. When the Lord of the Rings franchise came out, almost every actor wanted to be cast in it in one way or another, and Eddie Redmayne was no different. He too wanted to audition and got a chance to read for Bilbo Baggins, and, well, he took it a little too seriously.
I didn't want to, just do my usual boring thing, and so I went on YouTube and I found Ian Holm, who had played it in Lord of the Rings, and I tried to copy his character.
He went in all guns blazing and just went for it, quite hard. His mannerisms were too dramatic, and it was just so crazy that the casting director had to tell him to tone it down and use his own voice. For this one, he wasn't even surprised that he didn't get a callback. Number 6. Mark Strong as James Bond. Even though Mark Strong has had his fair share of playing villains, the one that he wanted extremely badly was that of James Bond, and he worked day and night to get the character right. This was back when you didn't really memorize your lines, but he did it anyway, just to stand out a little more.
I'd learnt my lines, I'd done all my preparation, and I thought, let's go out and celebrate. And I just overdid it. And the next day, I was just too hungover to do it.
At the time, Mark was actually roommates with Daniel Craig, who ended up getting the role eventually, and the two went partying so hard that the next morning, Mark was totally blank and bombed the audition entirely.
There's something really emotional about it as well.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
He called this loss excruciating. Considering the success Daniel got from the role, he must think about it all the time and wonder how great it would be to be in his shoes, even today. But hey, he's still a good sport about it. Number 5. Elizabeth Olsen as Khaleesi. "She's my queen" became the tagline of the whole world because of how great Emilia Clarke was at playing Khaleesi in Game of Thrones. But if the casting decision went a different way, it would have been Elizabeth Olsen riding those dragons instead. But can you really imagine the all-powerful Scarlet Witch not being able to get through an audition? That's what happened.
Like, you know what? Actually, I don't think I'm going to do this any justice. I will hopefully call me back at a different time for something else.
She tried, but she wasn't able to deliver the way the role needed her to, and ended up losing out on one of the biggest roles of the decade. Number 4. Leonardo DiCaprio as Moulin Rouge. Leo has worn several hats throughout his career, and almost all of them have been amazing performances. But that doesn't mean the man's not capable of failure too.
Lay your palm flat on that tabletop!
He auditioned for the role of Moulin Rouge, and well, considering the man doesn't really sing and has barely done any roles dancing, let's just say he wasn't really fit for the role. He tried singing, and when it came to performing the high note, he was so bad that the audition had to be stopped right there.
I was out having a drink with Leonardo DiCaprio a few years ago.
Well, haven't we all?
As you do. Yeah. And because he also read for the movie, believe it or not, and he didn't get it.
It's crazy to think that Leo could have tried out for something he knew he couldn't really do very well at, but hey, haven't we all been there? Number 3. Mahershala Ali as Zoro Shoandaxos. Even though the character of Zoro Shoandaxos was only featured on Game of Thrones for a few episodes, he did make an impact. Can you imagine how much bigger that impact would have been if Mahershala Ali got to play it? The Oscar-winning actor actually tried out for the role too, and everyone thought he'd have it in the bag. But despite working on it for weeks, he did not.
I think my audition guaranteed that I wasn't almost on Game of Thrones. That was one of the worst auditions of my life.
He went into it nervous because he had some negative experiences with the casting director in the past, so he kinda got in his head about the whole thing. By the time he got to the audition room, he was so on edge that the fact that the stool didn't have a backrest threw him off to the point that he just froze up and forgot everything he had to say. He was told he needed to loosen up, and that's gotta be one of the worst things you can hear on an audition you spent day and night preparing for. Number 2. Andrew Garfield as Prince Caspian. Can you even picture Andrew Garfield asking, "Why not me?" when it came to a role? Well, the role of Prince Caspian from the Chronicles of Narnia did to him. He recalls being desperate for the part and gave it his all at the audition, but he ended up receiving a no for it.
And it breaks my heart.
Yeah,
I got
understand
heartbroken a little bit to a certain degree.
What's crazy here is that Andrew did do a really good job at the audition, and he thought he'd actually get it, and that it would be the biggest break he could dream of. But they decided not to go ahead with him.
No, I really just wanted that part. I think the feedback was, he's not handsome enough or something.
It's crazy to think that someone could actually say that to Andrew, considering the insane fan base he has now, and while Ben Barnes was phenomenal in the role, we can't help but think how it would have been to see the amazing Spider-Man running around the mystical forests. Number 1. Chase Stokes as Steve Harrington. Stranger Things is one of those shows that really just catapulted everyone to crazy levels of success, whether they were the main lead cast or supporting characters. Steve Harrington ended up being such a fan favorite that his hair alone has an entire fan base. And to think Chase Stokes could have had it all had he made it through the audition without totally ruining it all.
So I actually read for Steve Harrington, and I forgot all the lines and absolutely effed up the audition. And I drove 8 hours from Atlanta back to Orlando, regretting every moment of my life on that.
It's not easy knowing that you just got too flustered to perform at an audition, but seeing that potential character becoming one of the most loved characters in all of TV history has to be a sting that's very difficult to get over. If Joe Keery hadn't absolutely nailed the audition, it's possible that Chase could have been the single mom that's basically carrying the entire show at times. And well, even Chase thinks that this might have just been the best call the studios could have made. Did you enjoy the video? Check out this next video and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more.